I spent 12 years eating cold beans straight from the can in a damp basement, convinced I was too dangerous to live among normal people. My stepmother, Marlene, told me every single day that I wasn't right in the head, that the world wasn't safe for someone like me. She said I had blackouts where I'd hurt people and forget, and that doctors had confirmed I was unstable after my parents' accident. The real shock came when I finally escaped at 18 and learned the truth. Marlene had been collecting checks from my dead mother's estate the whole time. $20,000 a month, every month, for 12 years. All while the world believed I was dead. My name's Ethan Whitaker, and 3 months ago, I was nothing more than a ghost living under the floorboards of the woman who called herself my protector. Marlene Blackwood married my dad when I was 6, 2 weeks before he died in a car crash with my mom. That's how she became my guardian, by default. The only family I had left, or at least that's what she wanted me to think. She had this clinical way of talking, like everything she said came straight from a doctor's mouth. Your condition requires isolation, Ethan. The episodes are getting worse. You nearly killed the neighbor's cat last week. Don't you remember? I never did remember. But I also couldn't imagine she'd lie about something like that. The basement she kept me in had 87 concrete blocks on the north wall. I know because I counted them every morning for 12 years. I wasn't sure if it was a prayer or a punishment. A small window near the ceiling let in a dim hint of daylight, painted black from the outside, so I couldn't see the world beyond. In the corner sat a chemical toilet she'd empty once a week, wearing thick rubber gloves like I carried some disease. A rusted sink dripped nonstop, 27 drops per minute. I counted those too. Meals came once a day on a strict rotation. Mondays were beans and white bread. Tuesdays, some kind of soup I was sure came from a shelter. Wednesdays, peanut butter sandwiches. Thursdays, back to beans. Fridays were treat days, which only meant the sandwich had jelly. Weekends were leftovers from whatever she'd eaten upstairs. I learned to savor every bite, even the moldy ones, because hunger was the only thing that proved I was still alive. You're lucky I don't send you to an institution, she'd say, sliding the tray just inside the door. She never stepped farther than 3 feet in. Do you know what they do to violent cases like you in those places? Electroshock, straitjackets, drugs that turn your brain to mush. But I protect you, Ethan. I keep you safe down here, where you can't hurt anyone, and no one can hurt you. Her lies were so carefully built that I believed every one of them. She even showed me fake medical reports from a Dr. Lawson, who supposedly checked on me every month, though I'd never seen him. The papers described violent episodes, mental decline, and recommended continued isolation. There were also letters from neighbors thanking Marlene for keeping things under control. Mrs. Carmichael from 2 houses down wrote again, Marlene would say. She still has nightmares about finding you in her garden that night, holding that knife. You really don't remember? I'd shake my head, terrified of what I might be capable of, thankful for the locked door that separated me from everyone else. Some nights, I'd lie awake wondering what kind of monster I was, what took over when my mind went dark. I'd stare at my hands under that dim light, searching for signs of violence, but found only the scrapes and bruises that came from living in concrete and shadows. That basement became my whole world, 20 by 15 feet of damp stone and silence. I did push-ups on the cold floor until my arms gave out, just to feel something besides emptiness. I taught myself to write using old, water-damaged textbooks she'd thrown down there sometime during my first year. The books were from the 1980s, outdated, yellowed, but they became my teachers, my company, my escape. I learned history that ended before I was born, math that stopped at algebra, and science that still listed Pluto as a planet. When voices from the neighborhood drifted through the vents, Marlene would crank up an old radio that mostly played static and one religious station. The Blackwood boy, he's in a special facility upstate. I heard her tell someone once during a summer barbecue. The smell of grilled meat drifted through that painted window, and I pressed my face against the wall, trying to imagine what normal felt like. Poor thing, she'd say. Never recovered from losing his parents. We visit when we can, but familiar faces might trigger another episode. She was so convincing that sometimes I even felt grateful. At least I wasn't locked in a hospital. At least I had books. At least she didn't let me hurt anyone. My dependence on her ran deep. When the toilet overflowed, when I got sick from spoiled food, when I outgrew the children's clothes she tossed down the stairs, I'd apologize. I thought it was my fault. But everything, every lie she built, started to fall apart on my 18th birthday. That's when Marlene made her first mistake. That's when greed cracked the story she'd built so carefully. That's when I realized the monster in that house had never been locked in the basement at all. My name is Ethan Whitaker, and until 3 months ago, I believed I was dangerous. Not violent, exactly, but broken. Marlene said I had blackouts where I hurt people and forgot. She said the doctors confirmed it after my parents died when I was 6. The way Marlene explained it always sounded official, like something straight out of a medical textbook. Post-traumatic psychiatric disorder with dissociative episodes, she'd say, reading from papers that looked stamped and serious. Patient poses an extreme risk to himself and others during blackout states. Indefinite supervised isolation recommended. She married my father just 2 weeks before the crash and never let me forget how charitable she'd been. Most people wouldn't have taken in a disturbed kid who wasn't even theirs. She'd remind me while handing over my daily meal of canned beans and crackers. But I keep you safe down here, away from anyone you might hurt. You should be thankful. According to her, the state had wanted to send me to a high-security psychiatric hospital after what I did to a teacher. What teacher? I'd asked once, confused. She'd shown me a police report with my name printed across the top. 6-year-old Ethan Whitaker accused of attacking his grief counselor, Mrs. Langley, with a pair of scissors. The file was stamped, signed, and perfectly official-looking. How could I argue with proof I couldn't remember? The basement wasn't pitch black, but close enough. A small window near the ceiling, painted black from the outside, let in a dull hint of light, just enough to tell night from day. In one corner sat a rusted sink and an old chemical toilet. My mattress smelled permanently of mildew, and the few textbooks she'd thrown down from the 1980s were, as she put it, good enough for someone in your condition. She came down once a day with food, always locking the door behind her. 3 distinct clicks. Click, click, click. That sound became the rhythm of my life. Those battered books became my education. I learned math, basic science, and history that stopped in 1985. The pages were yellowed and torn, but they were all I had. I memorized entire sections about the Revolutionary War, solved the same geometry problems until I could do them in my sleep, and read about atoms, planets, and cells until the words blurred together. Sometimes, when voices from outside drifted through the walls during summer cookouts, Marlene would crank up the radio. Static and sermons filled the air, but every so often I'd catch a flicker of music between frequencies and imagine what the world sounded like now. The Blackwood boy? Oh, he's in a special facility upstate. I heard her tell someone once through the vent. Poor thing. Still battling mental problems after losing his parents. We visit when we can, but the doctors say it might be years before he's ready for visitors. We're praying for a miracle. The neighbors must have believed her completely. I once heard Mrs. Zhao from next door say, "You're a saint for taking that on, Marlene. Most people would have let the state handle it." Family is family, Marlene replied. Even if he's not mine by blood, I made a promise to his father. I'll take care of Ethan as long as I have to. She even showed me letters, fake ones, from a place called Clearwater Psychiatric Institute for Troubled Youth. They described my treatment progress in hopeless terms. Patient continues to display violent tendencies. Medication adjustments ongoing. Family visitation not recommended. Each letter carried a different doctor's signature, messy scribbles that could have belonged to anyone. And I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? She was the only person I ever saw. She decided when I ate, when I slept, when I could use the toilet. She controlled everything. So when she told me I'd attacked a mailman during a blackout, I apologized. When she said the neighborhood had petitioned to have me removed after I'd killed someone's dog, I cried for an animal I didn't even remember. The basement was my whole world, 20 feet by 15 feet of gray concrete and decay. The paint on the walls peeled away in long strips that looked like dead skin. To stay sane, I did push-ups until I collapsed, traced shapes in the dust, and talked to myself just to remember what a voice sounded like. I invented company. Mr. Malcolm, the author of my biology book, became my science teacher. Mrs. Winslow, who wrote my history text, became my closest friend. They were the only stable people in my life, even if they weren't real. Some days I started to wonder if Marlene was right, if maybe I really was dangerous. She'd come down with bruises on her neck or scratches on her arms and say, "You did this last night, Ethan. You don't remember trying to choke me? This is why you have to stay down here. Imagine if you did this to a child." The guilt crushed me. I'd stare at my hands for hours, afraid of what they'd done, afraid of what they could still do. The thought of hurting someone terrified me more than the basement ever did. At least the walls couldn't bleed. At least the concrete kept the world safe from whatever lived inside me. That was my life for 12 years. For 1,380 days of believing I was too broken for sunlight, too dangerous for people, too far gone for freedom. But the truth was much darker than any disorder Marlene had described. Everything shifted on my 18th birthday. She came down with the usual tray, cold beans, crackers, but she was off, nervous, twitchy. Her eyes darted to her watch every few seconds, and her hands trembled as she placed the tray on the table. This time, there was something extra, a small cupcake with a single, unlit candle. "Listen carefully, Ethan," she said, her voice tighter than usual. The tray clattered against the concrete, the sound echoing through the walls. "There are going to be some changes," Marlene said flatly, her voice already shaking. "You're 18 now, which means certain legal things are shifting. I've arranged for your transfer to a permanent facility next week." The word permanent hit like a blade. My voice cracked when I spoke. It always did after long stretches of silence. "Permanent? What do you mean?" "It's for the best," she said, eyes fixed somewhere above my head instead of on me. "You'll get proper doctors, real medication, professional care. The van comes Tuesday morning. Don't make this difficult." "But, you said I was improving," I stammered. "Last month you said the episodes were getting better." Her expression didn't change. "I lied to spare your feelings. You're getting worse, Ethan. Last week, you somehow got out and attacked Mr. Dunham's son. The boy needed 15 stitches. The only reason you're not in jail is because I convinced everyone you're mentally incompetent." "Mr. Dunham's son?" I'd heard kids playing basketball next door just the day before, laughing, arguing, completely fine. Still, doubt crept in, like it always did. Maybe there was another son. Maybe I really had hurt someone. When she left, panic filled the room. A permanent facility meant forever. No sunlight, no freedom, no books. Just heavier locks and real doctors who might uncover the truth, or worse, medicate me into oblivion. But deeper than fear, I heard something else in her tone that day. Relief. Like she was finally dropping a burden she'd carried too long. That night, lying awake in the dark, I heard her through the vent. She must have thought I was asleep, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Her voice was sharper than usual, the words clear as glass. "Yes, Tuesday morning," she said. "He doesn't suspect a thing. Once he's committed with the paperwork I've prepared, the monthly checks from the trust keep coming to me as his permanent guardian. The psychiatric evaluation Dr. Lawson forged 12 years ago will hold up." Dr. Lawson. Forge. Trust. Monthly checks. The words spun in my mind like a storm tearing through every lie I'd believed. 20,000 a month for 12 years, Caleb, she continued. "Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed, keeping that boy locked up? But it's worth it. Once he's institutionalized, I'll have 40 more years of payments. I'll be set for life." My mother's estate? But she told me my mother died instantly in the crash. My memory tried to claw its way out of the fog. My mother's laugh, her voice, the smell of vanilla, the way she read to me every night. "The original will says the money transfers to Ethan when he turns 18, Marlene said. "But if he's declared mentally incompetent, I stay trustee indefinitely. The law firm thinks he's been dead for 12 years. They've been mailing checks for the memorial charity I made up. Once he's shipped off under a fake name, no one will ever trace him back to the Whitaker estate." Whitaker estate. Memorial charity. Fake name. Each phrase hit like a hammer. I slid down the wall, my legs useless, the air sucked out of my lungs. Everything was a lie. "What about the real psychiatric holds?" a man's voice asked. Caleb. I recognized it now. Her boyfriend. The one whose footsteps I used to hear upstairs when they laughed and drank wine while I ate cold beans below them. "Lawson will handle it," Marlene said. "He's been writing fake evaluations for years. One more won't matter. The boy's so conditioned he'll probably confirm whatever symptoms we tell him he has. Yesterday I told him he killed a dog, and he apologized for 20 minutes. They both laughed. The sound made my stomach turn. I'd cried for that dog. I'd lost sleep, haunted by guilt over a life I never took. The facility in Mexico will take him for $5,000 a month, cash, she went on. No questions, no paperwork. Just a bed, a locked door, and enough medication to keep him quiet. That leaves $15,000 profit every month, plus what I've saved. Caleb, we can finally buy that beach house in Florida. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every lie she'd told, every blackout, every supposed crime, every fake report, collapsed in on itself. What I'd mistaken for insanity was clarity. Sharp, clean, undeniable clarity. For 12 years, I hadn't been a patient. I'd been a prisoner. For 12 years, I'd begged forgiveness for sins I never committed. For 12 years, I believed I was a monster. But the monster was sleeping upstairs, dreaming about Florida sunsets paid for with my mother's money. I had 3 days. 3 days before that van came. 3 days to escape or vanish forever under a fake name in some Mexican hellhole. 3 days to save my life. I had 3 days left before Tuesday arrived. 3 days to get out of the basement that had been my entire world for 12 long years. But this time was different. I had something new, truth burning in my chest, and anger strong enough to melt away all the helplessness I'd learned to live with. The basement door was thick, solid wood, secured by a deadbolt that locked only from the outside. After 12 years of staring at it, I knew every crack and weakness. The hinges were old, layered with so many coats of paint they looked sealed into the frame. One corner of that frame had rotted from an old water leak. I'd noticed it years ago, but never thought to use it. Back then, I believed I deserved the punishment. Now that same soft spot looked like my way out. Saturday, I tested everything. First the window. I scraped at the black paint with a fork until I realized the bars outside made it useless. The vent was too small, even for my half-starved body. That left the door. I studied it for hours, running my fingers over the frame until I felt the weak spot again, the soft wood that crumbled under pressure. On Sunday morning, Marlene brought breakfast later than usual. She was dressed for church, her gold cross necklace catching the light, the one she wore whenever she wanted people to think she was righteous. "You're quiet," she said, eyeing me like I was a problem waiting to happen. "Just nervous about Tuesday," I mumbled, keeping my eyes low. I'd learned that meeting her gaze only made her uneasy. "Will you come see me at the facility?" I asked. Her shoulders dropped, her tone softening. "Of course, dear. Every month, like a good mother should." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly, it made me wonder if she even remembered the truth. "Marlene," I said, letting my voice shake. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the trouble, for the people I hurt. You've been so patient." She smiled then, really smiled, for the first time in years. "That's very mature of you, Ethan," she said. "The doctors there will help you. Maybe one day you'll get better." She left humming a hymn, certain her plan was working. That night, I waited until 2 a.m. She always took sleeping pills, something I'd learned from years of listening through the vents. I pulled out the fork I'd kept hidden for months, my one possession, and started scraping the damp, rotted wood around the lock. It came apart in soft, wet strips. My fingers bled from the splinters, but I didn't stop. By 3 a.m., the frame was weak enough to expose the deadbolt screws, rusty, eaten away, barely holding. I grabbed the handle and pulled with every ounce of strength I had left. The wood groaned, then cracked. The deadbolt tore free. The door opened. The stairs looked steeper than I remembered. My legs trembled from years of weakness. The 7th step creaked loud enough to freeze me in place. I held still for a full minute, listening. Nothing. Just the ticking of a clock upstairs, a sound I'd forgotten existed. The house was dark and strange. The kitchen was new, all granite counters and shiny stainless steel appliances, paid for with my mother's money. Family photos lined the hallway. None of them included me. Instead, Marlene and Caleb smiled from beaches and cruise ships, vacations funded by my captivity. I found her office just where she'd once mentioned it. The door was unlocked, her arrogance making her careless. Papers were scattered across the desk. What I found made my stomach turn. Bank statements showing automatic deposits of $20,000 every month from the Lillian Whitaker Trust. Lillian Whitaker, my mother. Her name hit me like a memory, her handwriting looping across brown paper lunch bags. I dug through drawers and found photos I'd never seen. My mother holding me as a baby, my father teaching me to ride a bike, the 3 of us smiling on a beach I didn't remember. We looked normal. We looked happy. Nothing like the story Marlene had told about my so-called illness. Then I found the folder marked Ethan commitment papers. Inside were forged psychiatric reports with Dr. Lawson's fake signature describing violent fits, fake medications, and symptoms that never existed. Every page another chain, keeping me locked away. At the very bottom was the document that stopped my heart. Missing person case hashtag 2012-4478. Ethan Whitaker, age 6. Presumed dead. The world thought I was gone. My family, my mother's lawyers, everyone. They'd buried me on paper while I lived 20 feet underground. I grabbed the key evidence, bank records, the missing person file, forged reports, and a photo of my parents, and stuffed them into a plastic bag. Proof of who I was. Proof of what she'd done. Then I saw her wallet on the counter. $60 inside. Three $20 bills that felt heavier than gold. I needed real clothes. In the laundry room, a donation bag sat ready for Goodwill. I found jeans that hung loose on my frame, a flannel that smelled faintly of Caleb's cologne, and a baseball cap to hide my face. I threw my basement rags in the trash and changed. At the back door, I stopped. 12 years of conditioning told me I was dangerous, that the outside world wasn't safe for me. But that was her voice, not mine. I turned the knob and stepped into the night. For the first time since I was 6, I breathed free air. The world smelled cleaner, sharper, alive. Bigger than I ever remembered. Free. The word barely made sense outside my head. The world hit me all at once. Bright, loud, alive. Streetlights burned my eyes like tiny suns. Cars flew past faster than I remembered, their headlights slicing the dark so sharply I flinched. I walked for miles without a plan. I just knew I had to get as far from that house as possible. My legs shook, unsteady from years of barely moving more than a few steps. By sunrise, I was downtown, Portland apparently. I hadn't even known that's where I lived. A help wanted sign in front of the Ridgeway corporate building caught my attention. Janitor needed. Immediate start. It felt like fate was throwing me a rope. Inside, I probably looked like a ghost. Pale skin, clothes too big, eyes wide from seeing too much too fast. Behind the front desk sat a man reading a newspaper. Mr. Delgado, building manager. You 18? He asked without looking up. His voice was rough, like gravel soaked in smoke. Yes, sir. You start today? Yes, sir. Fine. Minimum wage. Night shift. Don't steal. Uniforms in the closet. Keys are numbered. Screw up and you're gone. That was my interview. For 2 weeks straight, I worked from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., cleaning offices and emptying trash cans. I slept in a storage room on the 3rd floor, washed in the employee bathroom before anyone arrived, and saved every dollar. Nobody asked who I was or why I flinched at loud noises. To them, I was just the quiet new janitor. Mr. Delgado didn't ask why I wanted cash. Maybe he thought I was hiding from taxes or an ex-wife. He didn't care, as long as the floors were clean. I learned the building's rhythm like it was a song. The lawyers on the 20th floor worked late. The accountants on the 10th always left by 6. The marketing crew on 15 threw parties that left the place trashed with spilled wine and untouched food. When they left, I'd pocket sandwiches, fruit, whatever they didn't eat. It kept me alive and saved me a few dollars from the dollar menu. Then came the night that changed everything. October 15th, a Thursday. I was cleaning the executive floor, Hargrove Law Firm. The name meant nothing to me when I first saw it, just another office with polished glass and fake smiles. Usually, it was empty when I arrived, but that night, light shone from under the conference room door. Sometimes partners stayed late, so I knocked softly and pushed the card in. Sorry, sir. I'll come back later. I mumbled when I saw an older man surrounded by papers. He looked up. His mug slipped from his hand and shattered across the floor, coffee pooling like ink on marble. His face drained of color. No, that's not possible, he whispered, his voice trembling. He stood, holding onto the table like he needed it to stay upright. I froze. I'm sorry, sir, I'll clean that up. I dropped to my knees, gathering the pieces. Your face, he said, stepping closer, shoes crunching on the ceramic. Your eyes. You're supposed to be dead. My breath caught. What? Lillian swore you died in that crash, with your father. Lillian. My mother's name. I went still, a shard of the mug slicing my palm without me noticing. You knew my mother? The man sank into a chair, shock written across his face. His name tag read Malcolm Hargrove, senior partner. Knew her? He said softly. She hired us 20 years ago to set up your trust fund. She was worried. She had a weak heart. She wanted to make sure you'd be safe no matter what happened. She set aside $20 million in your name. 20 million? My voice cracked. The room tilted. I grabbed my cart to steady myself. But after the crash, he went on. Your stepmother brought us death certificates. Yours. Your father's. The documents were official. The trust instructions said that if you died, the money went to your guardian for charitable work in your memory. So for 12 years, we've been sending her $20,000 a month. I could barely breathe. She locked me in a basement, I said quietly. For 12 years. Hargrove's face turned red with fury. Show me your arms, he demanded. I hesitated, then rolled up my sleeves. Pale skin, thin veins, scars from scratching at concrete and fighting the walls. They told the story without words. He swallowed hard. My God. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands. Simone, he said, voice tight, cancel my evening. Get Detective Keaton over here now. And pull the Lillian Whitaker trust files. Every single one. Yes, Whitaker. Lillian Whitaker's son is alive. He hung up, then looked at me with tears pooling in his eyes. Your mother was my best friend's daughter, Ethan. When she died, I promised her at the funeral I'd look after you. I failed her. I failed you. He clenched his jaw. But I swear to you now, that woman, your stepmother, will pay for every day she stole from you. I don't understand, I said weakly. The death certificates? Forged. They had to be, he said. Your mother was cautious. She added a clause. If you were ever declared dead without a body, we had to hire investigators to confirm it. But your stepmother showed us everything, certificates, a funeral program, even photos of a gravestone with your name. We had no reason to doubt her. Malcolm said it quietly, shaking his head like he was still trying to process how completely they'd all been fooled. He grabbed a tablet, fingers moving fast across the screen. Here, he said, turning it toward me. This is your mother's file. On the display was a young woman with my same dark hair and the same eyes I saw in the mirror. She looked confident, alive, and unstoppable. She was brilliant, Malcolm said softly. Graduated Harvard Law at 21. She knew her time might be short, so she built protections around your life and money. What she never imagined was someone keeping you alive just to steal from you. An hour later, Detective Keaton showed up with 2 FBI agents. My story, kidnapping, fraud, abuse, crossed state lines, which meant it was now federal. They interviewed me right there in the same conference room where I'd been mopping floors not long before. Malcolm never left my side. His hand stayed on my shoulder, steady and solid, like he was making up for all the years no one had been there. When I finished telling them everything, Keaton stood. We move now, he said. If she figures out he's gone, she'll run. By 3 in the morning, Marlene was in handcuffs. She'd already been packing when they arrived, suitcases loaded into her car. Caleb was in the backyard, trying to burn papers that wouldn't save them. The basement still smelled like the 12 years I lost down there. Forensics later confirmed it all. Scratches in the concrete, DNA, traces of blood. My cell turned into evidence. The trial hit the media like wildfire. They called me the basement boy. Malcolm. He makes me call him by his first name now. Kept my real identity off the record, using every legal angle he knew. Marlene was sentenced to 40 years for kidnapping, fraud, and false imprisonment. The judge called her actions the most deliberate cruelty he'd ever seen in a courtroom. Dr. Lawson, the psychiatrist who falsified my records, lost his license and got 15 years. Caleb got 10 for helping. They even found proof he'd been planning to kill me if their Mexico facility plan failed. But the noise faded after that. The cameras left, and the real work began. Malcolm handled everything himself. The trust my mother left wasn't just 20 million anymore. It had grown to 32 through careful investments. But money couldn't replace the childhood I never had or teach me how to be a person again. Malcolm understood that better than anyone. He came to every therapy session, teaching me the small things most people take for granted. How to shake hands with confidence. How to hold eye contact without fear. How to believe that not everyone was lying to me. Your mother was remarkable, he told me one day, spreading photos across the table. She finished Harvard Law at 23, clerked for a Supreme Court justice. She would have been so proud that you survived. He showed me home videos, her holding me as a baby, teaching me to walk, reading me stories before bed. Hearing her voice again broke me open in a way I didn't expect. Once my therapy stabilized, I enrolled in an accelerated education program. Turns out, 12 years with nothing but old books gave me a head start on studying alone. I got my GED in a year. 2 years later, I was in college, majoring in law, following the same path my mother took. Malcolm became more than a mentor. He was family. He brought me home for dinners, introduced me to his wife and kids, and made sure I knew what it felt like to belong somewhere. The hardest lessons weren't academic. They were emotional. Trust. Safety. Believing that a locked door didn't mean danger. My therapist, Dr. Zhao, says I've made exceptional progress. But some nights, I still wake up certain I'm back in that basement, and freedom feels like the dream. Dr. Zhao says trauma doesn't go away, it just changes shape. You learn to carry it differently. I bought my own place not long after the trial. It's small, but it's mine. Every room has windows. The kitchen has 3. The bathroom has a skylight. My bedroom faces east, so I wake with the sunrise. Sometimes I just stand there, watching people pass by on the street, still amazed I get to exist out here. My neighbors think it's strange that I never close the curtains. But privacy feels too much like the dark. Then, last week, another piece of my life found me. A letter from a woman named Teresa, my mother's sister. She thought I died 12 years ago and had even spoken at my funeral. She wanted to meet, to tell me about my mom. We met at a coffee shop. She grabbed my hands and cried before she could speak. "You have her eyes," she said finally, "and her strength. Lillian would be so proud of you." Through her, I met the family I never knew. Cousins, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all people who had mourned me for more than a decade. They welcomed me with a love so real it hurt. Malcolm was right. Family isn't always blood, he told me. Sometimes it's the ones who refuse to stop looking for you, even when they think you're gone. I decided to use part of my inheritance for something that mattered. It's called the Hidden Children Foundation. Our goal is to find missing kids who might not actually be missing, just hidden like I was. In the past year, we've helped rescue 17 children from basements, attics, and backrooms, all places owned by people who were supposed to protect them. If 12 years taught me anything, it's this. Monsters don't live under the bed. They live upstairs. They're the ones holding the keys. Marlene was right about one thing, though. I did have episodes where I blacked out. Every night down in that basement, I found ways to black out the pain, the loneliness, and the hopelessness. Those moments people might call breakdowns weren't mental illness. They were my body's way of surviving. And I did survive. People sometimes ask if I've forgiven Marlene. The truth is, I haven't. Forgiveness is something you offer for accidents, mistakes, or moments of weakness. What she did wasn't weakness. It was a deliberate act of cruelty, carried out day after day for 12 long years. I can't forgive that. But I also refuse to let her control the rest of my life. She already stole more than a decade from me. She doesn't get another second through my hate or my anger. My story isn't rare. Somewhere right now, there's another kid being told they're dangerous, broken, or unlovable. Someone they trust is convincing the world that child is gone, when in truth, they're just hidden. So if something feels wrong, speak up. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't assume the people in charge have it right. Sometimes the person who claims to love you most is the one who locks the door. I'm 21 now. I'm in law school. I've got a girlfriend who knows every piece of my story and loves me anyway. I've got a family that searched for me long after hope was gone. And somehow, they found me. I have a life again. A life Marlene tried to erase but couldn't destroy. And each morning, when sunlight floods my apartment, I'm reminded that basements only trap you if you stop believing there's a way out. If my story reached you, share it. Tell someone who might need to hear that survival is real, that freedom exists, and that the truth, no matter how long it's buried, always finds a way to rise to the surface.